Hello, my name is Barry Lewis, and I live in the Seattle area of Washington State. Today I'd like to share the story of Esme Ruth Smith and her medical service in South Korea. Australian Esme Smith heard the call for people with professional abilities to serve the church at the 1964 World Conference. As a trained midwife, Esme felt the call, and so she met with Apostle Charles Neff to ask to be considered for service. Later that year, she made a 4-year commitment to go to South Korea, where she could offer her midwife training in service to others. For the next 4 years, she worked in the hospital sponsored by Seoul National University. Because of her efforts and some $30,000 allocated by the Joint Council from the World Church Oblation Fund, a church clinic was ready to be constructed. By this time, Bill and Jane Guthrie, who had served in Korea years earlier, returned there for a second assignment. Esme and the Guthries teamed up to plan the clinic. The difficult decision of where to build the clinic had to be made. They could have built it in a city or a large town, but chose, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Mekok, approximately 78 miles south of Seoul, instead. It was really isolated. There were no telephones, no radio. Esme would have to walk a half-mile in the mud just to get to somewhere that she could catch a ride to a town of any size. One doctor and 2 nurses worked with Esme with funding from the South Korea Church and government assistance. Support staff from Seoul National University visited the clinic once a month. She set high standards at the clinic, and her midwife skills were in high demand because the clinic served 12 nearby villages. Malnutrition was a common concern for children, and adults were often afflicted with tuberculosis. But of the challenges that she faced, patriarchy was the greatest cultural challenge. Her take-charge efficiency met with opposition in the chauvinistic society. As a result, at the end of one long day, she and her nursing staff had served nearly 100 patients. She happened to walk into the doctor's office only to find him biding his time with his feet up on the desk. And with her quick temper, she took him to task. She threw papers at him and stormed out of his office. Everyone on the staff knew of her uncompromising commitment to patient care. But Esme was also concerned with spiritual care. She taught Sunday school classes and held worship services in the church-sponsored clinic. Since she was the only church member in the area, she had to minister by herself. At times, she would have as many as 150 children in attendance. Since they had no concept of Western religions or cultures, they were just primarily interested in the story of Jesus. So she focused on the New Testament. Esme Smith's contribution was significant. In reflecting on her many years of service, Apostle Charles Neff concluded, and I quote, "I would just say that when we think about the, more or less, heroes of missionary work, I would certainly put Esme Smith's name at the top of the list," end quote. For me, Esme is an example of someone who served those in need, often at the expense of her own comfort. She lived a life of Christ-like servanthood. She did something. I'm grateful for her example and the example of others in our world and in our church. And if you like this story and want to learn more, I recommend getting a copy of The Journey of a People by Mark A. Scherer. I first learned about Esme's story while reading this volume 3 for my Community of Christ seminary class on church history. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you and as you strive to find your place of service.